Hello, everyone. Hello from Rijeka, Croatia, from the IT community Rijeka. My name is Višnja Željeznjak, and my colleague is Rene. Hi, Rene.
Hi. Hi.
It's awesome to have you here. Today we have a tech talk that where we want to review the book that I have read recently, which is amazing. And we're not only going to review the book, the Embedded Entrepreneur. We are bringing the author with us. I want everybody to welcome Arvid Kahl. Welcome, Arvid. Welcome to our show.
Hey there.
Awesome.
Welcome.
Arvid,
Thanks
you
for
are
having me.
you're connecting from Canada. You're a German living in Canada. And please introduce yourself so that our community gets to know you a little better.
Trying to be fast because this could take a while. I've been doing a lot of things, but I used to be a software engineer, and I built a lot of things for different companies all over the world, like bootstrap companies, VC funded, all kinds. And then I tried a couple of times to build my own stuff and failed horribly and learned a lot. And then at some point, I actually built something that went really well, and we sold that company that was co-founded by me and my girlfriend at the time. And ever since then, I've been a writer because I wanted to share what I learned. And from writing through writing, I became active on Twitter. I became a teacher, a mentor, and a consultant, all these kind of things. I'm always an entrepreneur still. So it's a mixture between a software engineer and a person that turned into a writer and an entrepreneur all together. And now I'm just trying to teach whatever I can in whatever many ways I can find online.
Amazing. Arvid, so the book that actually got me here to this talk is The Embedded Entrepreneur. Like I said, I read it recently. This is not your first book. You wrote Zero to Sold, where you actually wrote in depth about your entire journey from starting your startup and bringing it to a very successful SaaS and then selling it for what you described as a life-changing amount of money. Can you talk about that experience a little bit first, and then we're going to dive deeply into the book?
The writing experience or the experience of the startup? What do you want to know?
So let's start with the startup. You said you had an experience where you failed, but you eventually succeeded.
Right. Well, the failed experiences, there's so many of those. We could probably spend a couple hours just talking about these. But in the past, like after I worked for a couple agencies and for a couple of software businesses, when I tried to build my first business with a couple friends in Berlin, the city that I lived in for the last probably 10-ish years or so, we tried to build like a local food marketplace. That was hilarious. And we completely forgot to validate our assumptions. That was one of the things that I always now very gladly talk about, but didn't want to think about much at the time because I wanted to build. I wanted to be a technical co-founder, make the thing, features, like as a technical person, you just want to create things. And we all in that team of three, there was a designer and somebody had the idea, and me as a technical founder, we really, really wanted to build something, and we forgot to validate our marketplace, both with the people who were supposed to buy food on it and the people who were supposed to sell food on it. It was horrible. We were sitting there, we were building for years, like literally a year and a couple months, building the most well-designed platform that nobody ever used. Was horrible. In retrospect, obviously, I learned a lot during that time, both on a technical level, I learned how to build this, which was cool. And also on an entrepreneurial level, I learned what doesn't work, which was also very interesting. So over the years, I had a couple of these projects. And then in 2017, when I was still living in Berlin, but working for a company in Hamburg in Germany, which is like 2.5 hours by train, which I took regularly back and forth, some semi-remote work that I did. My girlfriend was working from home. Danielle was teaching English online, and she had a problem. I had the technical capability of solving it, but instead of just building something, hopefully for it to sell, we sat down and we thought, okay, is this a good problem? Is there an audience for this? Do people really have this as a critical problem, not just any problem? And then how can we best solve it? I solved it for her. She tested it, and then we involved a community of online teachers, which was very tight-knit because everybody was doing the same job. So they had a strong network, and then we sold into that network, got a lot of feedback, and we built a business from there, which grew to $55,000 in monthly recurring revenue over 2 years, at which point we sold the business to a private equity company for what you said I am allowed to say is a life-changing amount of money. And ever since then, I've been sharing what I learned there and all the failed attempts before in building a business and the product that people actually are willing to pay money for. That's kind of where this comes from. This is the experience where we built that business in a way that actually resonated with an existing audience that had an existing problem that we could actually solve. You know, the thing you actually want to do when you build a business, but there it worked because we followed a plan. And yeah, that's what I'm talking about most of the time. And particularly in Zero to Sold, the book that just details the whole journey from the first, I want to build a business. How does this even work? To, okay, now we're selling this business. How does that work? Right? Anything in between, from finding your first customer to dealing with hiring, dealing with scalability issues from a technical perspective, as well as a business perspective, and then building a sellable business, documenting, automating, to what am I going to do after I sell my business. All of this is in the book because it's essentially my whole story that I put into that book. And then I noticed that people had particular questions about particular stages of the book, but one of them was, okay, I need to start. I need the very first thing. You need to help me solve this. Who do I serve? Where's my audience? The book is great, and I'm super happy to learn about like all these things later, but I need to get the first thing right. So that's why I wrote The Embedded Entrepreneur, and that's what we're talking about today. It's like the zooming into the very first part of starting your entrepreneurial journey.
Amazing, Arvid. So the book, the start of the book has been actually an eye-opener for me. So the book is divided into a couple of sections. You teach people how to discover audiences that you want to serve, how to explore the audience and find interesting and profitable problems, and finally how to build the audience that can sustain your business. But the actual start of the book, where you told the reader to you tell us to ask ourselves whether or not we care about the audience. So caring about the audience is very important. And can you go a little bit deeper about why is that important, how this helped you in particularly, or people who you've spoken to after you wrote the book?
Yeah, in many of the previous businesses that I was part of and that didn't work out, I really had very little connection to the kind of customer that we were eventually going to be solving the problem for, right? For the local food marketplace, for example, that we were trying to build, we essentially wanted to serve foodies in the city, like essentially hipsters, people who want like the good new fancy food from like locally around the city of Berlin. And on the other side of the marketplace, we were going to be serving farmers from those places to sell their products into the city. But neither of those really resonated. Good food here, right? But it's not like necessarily the organic local food kind of part. So didn't resonate with me on that side. And farmers, I come from a city boy background. Like I'm a technical person. If you tell me something about a plant, I will nod, but not necessarily understand it, right? I don't have this kind of rural background. Funny enough, we moved to a really small town in Canada. I'm now getting to learn all of these things. But, it's not part of where I come from. It's part of where I went to eventually. But either side, no real relationship. That was one business that didn't work. The other business that also didn't work out was we built a little file distribution app for photojournalists, people who go to war zones and take pictures, essentially. And back then there was Afghanistan and Syria, right? So we had people. A friend of mine had a friend who was such a photographer, and we built something for them so they could upload their files quickly through a really, really bad connection so they could distribute them to agencies. Don't really need to go into this, but I also had no connection to that. I was building a product for somebody that I didn't know how they would use it, and we really didn't talk to them either. Big problem, but it was important for me in retrospect to understand that, okay, because I didn't care about these people, I didn't care about their problems enough. And because I didn't care about their problems enough, my solution was just a pretty general thing. It wasn't specifically tailored to their needs because I didn't understand the motivation that went into this. But when we built Feedback Panda, this SaaS business, the online teacher business that I co-founded with Danielle, my partner, she was somebody I really cared about because she was my girlfriend. And she was sitting there teaching for 10 hours a day and then wasting 2 additional hours doing administrative work that she wasn't paid for. I noticed how she was feeling about this. I felt bad because there was 2 hours that I could have spent with my girlfriend that I didn't because she had to do work. And I knew, okay, this problem looks like something I can solve. And I have somebody who can immediately tell me, is this a problem that needs to be solved? And is the solution good? So I cared about her. I cared about her problem and therefore also about the solution. And one of the most important things when it comes to whatever audience you end up choosing to serve and empower is you're going to be doing this for a while. Like, you're going to be doing this for the next 5 years, maybe 10 years, depending on how quickly you can build the business and how long you actually want to stay in it. Some people want to build a business for the rest of their life. Some people want to build it for 3 to 4 years and then sell it. It doesn't matter. It's a long time. So if you hate the people that you're serving, in my case, wouldn't say hate, but I don't really care much about like lawyers or tax advisors. These are people that work on a different kind of level than I do, right? They are very methodical, very like structural. I'm more a creative kind of spirit. So there's a little disconnect between those people. But I would hate to work for them. I don't hate them, but I hate to work for them and have to like put myself into their mind, which is not mine, every single day for the next 5 years to solve their problems. So it's not necessarily about your perspective to the people, but more like to how people think and what space they live in, what problems they have. Because if you're not interested in their problems, because you're not interested in them and why they are solving these problems for themselves, then you're not going to be interested in building a great solution to help them. So that's why it's so important to have some sort of affinity for the field that you're going to be serving, to the people in there, to the field itself, the undercurrents of the industry, right? If you look, again, tax advisors, well, taxes, tax compliance. What's interesting about that? If people pay their taxes, our roads get built or something. That's great, but it's not something I care deeply about, right? But if I look into the creator space, people finding financial stability, financial security, financial freedom, as a person that got there, I care deeply about this. So I will always feel much more attuned and much more affinity towards people in this space. That makes my interest stronger. It makes my problem-solving capabilities stronger because I'm just going to have more energy going into this. Ernie, you notice, I don't really like the people I'm serving. Yeah. Well, then you're not going to have fun, right? It's going to be a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I have noticed myself that I have gone. I've been in business for 20 years, and throughout that time, my company has been a development agency. Now we're a consultancy, and I have noticed that if my business does not support my lifestyle, it doesn't matter. It does matter who the clients are. But if my business is a nuisance to me, I'm actually building a prison for myself. And you can always, not go to work if you work for somebody else. You just quit. But how can you quit your own business? That's very hard. And so this is why it was so actually eye-opening for me that when you want to build something, you have to start with from where you come from, who you care for, what problems do you care for in this world? Because if it's not a problem that's going to, drive you for years, then you're just going to quit. And this has been my experience with my projects. René, do you have similar experiences yourself?
But we in the company have this policy of what we basically say is to put ourselves in other people's shoes, in the shoes of our clients. So, but it's easier said than done. Like, you can say it out loud. It doesn't mean anything. The thing that kind of connects you with the client is that stress and that sweat that breaks when something goes wrong. And you don't want to have that for your client. So a lot of the times we like to hire people that have done something, some sort of a project, and had even a small client building a small web shop for a mom and pop store. It doesn't really matter because that person has definitely felt at some point some sort of a pressure of doing something right and failing at something. So it already creates this connection, like of having empathy. Perhaps that is kind of perhaps the good word for it. I'm not sure.
Oh, I love that. I love this focus on empathy, because it really, to me, empathy is one of the foundational things that leads to you wanting to empower other people. Like, if you can feel their needs and their willingness to just be good, you know, to be a kind person, to be a helpful person, to be somebody who does their job right so other people benefit from it. If you can feel that, then you will enable them to do that better, and you will put all your energy into making this possible. And that is empowerment. That's really what empowerment is all about, right? If you can give other people the means to help themselves a little bit better than before. And I think that to me is the foundation of any good business. Like, any business that is actually working in the interest of the person they're serving. Not just like, you know, like the drug dealer metaphor, right? Where you make a lot of money of them destroying their own health, right? That's the opposite of what I'm talking about. It's more like what a pharmaceutical industry should be, right? Somebody actually helping other people becoming healthier and becoming better. That's kind of the foundation of any good business that I see. And those are the people that I cheer for. People who have this empathy at the core of their just the decision-making process. Everything they do is an empathetic and an empowerment move. So those people I really admire. And that's kind of what I see more now in the online communities, like in the indie hacker and the software entrepreneur community, because people are building their businesses in public and they see how quickly a little bit of empathy resonates so much more with people than it ever has before. Like, it's such an immediately noticeable thing that if you're kind, or if you're vulnerable, if you're just yourself, people will start treating you like a person. It's not like the brands, like it's not Coca-Cola, which is a faceless brand that you can interact with, and then you like their ad and they're happy because you clicked on something. Now it's really between people. It's between, even if you have a brand, even if you have a business or you are part of a business, it's still the person first, and then comes like the formal shell. And that is really nice, because that is such a great thing in our community and in almost all communities out there to leverage to get where you want to go and where you want to see the people that you're serving, where they want to go. It's a win-win. And that's kind of what a good business is making win-win situations appear reliably every single day. It's how I define it internally, because that just makes such a big difference compared to, you know, the big corporate kind of machines.
I remember this retail. It is a true story, and I cannot remember what retail store it is, but it is a big retail store in Europe. Mm-hmm. And if I remember the story correctly, the person that was going to inherit the company and start being a CEO had this role of going through all of the departments and working there for up to a month. So basically what he did was I think that they dealt with clothes. So first month he was at the store dealing with clients, like the end clients, and folding clothes, putting them back on the shelf, on the hangers, whatever. So perhaps that was their intention, like the management's intention was like to invoke that empathy for every department. Mm-hmm. So it kind of makes sense now when you mention it.
That's an interesting story. It reminds me so much of what my grandmother told me, how she started her career in the 1940s. And I'm talking about East Germany. So it was in the Soviet kind of economical system, because that's where I'm from, right? I'm from the East. So I grew up for the first 5 years of my life in a Soviet kind of country, which obviously, yeah, it's not very different now. But she told me that when she went to work for the first time, she was a bookkeeper, right? She was like doing, kept the books for companies and stuff. Mm-hmm. She was working in just accounting, essentially. She was an accountant. And when she started her job, she was put into the factory, because you got to work here for 2 weeks. You got to see how the things that you're going to take care of in the lists are being made. And then you're going to sales for 2 weeks, because you're going to see how it's being sold. And you're going to go into distribution for 2 weeks. And she did the exact same thing, but that was a structural component of how new employees were onboarded into the business, which is something that I would like to see much more of today, because it would be so much nicer if people would actually understand the holistic business, right? Everything in the what makes the thing, how this thing is sold, how people are being organized, how they're managed and stuff, that would be so much nicer. But I think we hire so much for specific roles now and silo them in our businesses that communication doesn't happen, understanding doesn't transfer, and then we have people just making decisions on, you know, just procedures without understanding the impact that they're having, which I guess is a different discussion. But one of the most important things I guess we can, or learnings we can draw for a bootstrapped or self-funded business, is that if you hire somebody, one of your first hires at least, just involve them in everything. It's probably best, because you know that the core team, any core team, everybody needs to do the things at the same time and understand how the people do their work, why they do their work, and to what end they do it. Right? I think for every startup that is the normal thing. But huge businesses, larger businesses, they lose that at some point because they over-optimized for specific positions. It would be nice to have that as part of your company DNA, your culture, to involve people in that at all times. I think there's several SaaS businesses where people, even engineers, or particularly engineers, get to, or have to, depends, do customer service every now and then, right? Yep. Because they're supposed to understand who they are building for, how they communicate, which is something super valuable. Understanding the language that people use to describe what they're doing is going to be super useful for any engineer who has to build features that speaks to these people. Like, obviously, this is how engineers should communicate, and most of the time they get siloed away in their little engineering group, which is probably highly effective, but effective at what? At solving the problems the wrong way? I don't know, right? If that's how it should be. But that really helped me, because in Feedback Panda, I was the only technical person. So Danielle was the CEO of the business. Like, she ran product, she understood design, and she understood what we would need to build, and I would build it. But I also did customer service. So whenever somebody had a problem, I would hear of it right there. I could talk to people, understand exactly what the problem was, and solve it for them right there and then, which in turn was a surprise to those people that somebody listened to them. Like, when you reach out to customer service and then they just ignore you. That's what's happening most of the time. But in our case, we actually help these people. Often within like 20 minutes or 15 minutes, a new version of the software would be deployed that fixed their problem. And that was the best marketing we could do. Because they would go to Facebook, into their little groups, and they would say, hey, you won't believe this, but Peter Panda had a bug, and I talked to them, and now it's fixed. That's never happened for me before. That's how the evangelism started, because people love talking about our product to their peers that we wanted to sell to, because we took them seriously, and we put our effort and our resources into solving their problems when they appeared. And that made a whole lot of difference, too, because we never spent any meaningful amount of money on advertising or marketing. That was all organic through our community or our newsletter or our Instagram outreach or whatever we chose to do with the people that we already had a relationship with. We didn't need to go out there and do cold emails or do paid advertising, because people would already talk about us in their own communities, which we were part of, so we could see it and amplify it when we needed to. So that was super helpful. And that's kind of what I write about in the book. It's all very community-centric, because the community is where people talk, and you want to be the thing that people talk about. So got to be there.
Yep. And exactly. So when you were talking about how to get to know the clients, in the book, you teach people how to, embed themselves in the community first, and actually get to know the customers that you say that you want to serve. And can you tell us a little bit about the starting of embedding yourself as an entrepreneur in the community? So let's say that so for example, you serve makers, startup founders, SaaS businesses. How do you embed yourself into the community for the first time? So the first step for anyone who wants to build a SaaS.
The first thing is to stop thinking of ideas. That's the very first step, is to understand that a great business idea is a consequence of understanding more about the people that you want to serve than you already know, right? Many people start with, oh, I want to build Tinder for cats, or I want to build the next that, or the next that. Like, they just think of the tangible products that they see all around them, right? That's kind of how we understand things as engineers. I look at my microphone. Oh yeah, this is a product, right? I don't see the story of the microphone. I see the tangible microphone. So if I were to do something new in terms of hardware, I would think of the new microphone and what it would look like and how it would work. But the fact is, maybe people don't need a new microphone. Maybe they need a new piece of software to, I don't know, like transfer a file from A to B because, you know, the audio upload or something. I don't know what they need until I'm listening, until I actually know who am I going to be serving, where are they, how can I listen to what they have to say, and what do they talk about. That's kind of where that's kind of the preface to the idea, because only when I know that there's enough people out there that have a budget to solve their problems, and they have a problem that is so critical that they want to spend money on it, then can I think of how can I solve this? What can I build? What can I make? That's the paradigm shift, which is why this is an audience-centric or an audience-first approach. You look at who do I want to serve? Who's going to be my future audience? And then you figure out where they are and so on. I'll get to that in a second. But you defer the whole idea. The idea first approach leads to what happens on Product Hunt every single day, which is there's 3 or 4 really cool things on top, and then there's 200 products below that nobody cares about. And those 200 products, they're not bad products. Usually these are really well-engineered pieces of software, probably well over-engineered pieces of software too, but you know, they're really good stuff. It's just that they were built for a non-existing market, or they were built without involving an audience at any point. They have no fans. Nobody cares because nobody knows, right? It's this whole build it and they will come mentality that we've all been taught through the movies, and every entrepreneur that talks about it does not exist. That's not how it works, right? You need to market your product, and to be able to market your product, you need to have a market that you can actually market it to, which is the whole point of embedded entrepreneurship. So once you figured out who you want to serve, in my case, makers, creators, or writers, I have multiple audiences that I want to serve, so that's problematic, but usually you pinpoint one of them, and then you go to where they hang out. First off, you need to figure out where they go. For writers, there are a lot of communities on Twitter. There are a lot of communities on Reddit, and maybe that's a pro tip. Almost anything that you might find interesting has a subreddit somewhere. Like just earlier today, I found that there's a subreddit for dogs wrapped in blankets called, I think, babushka dogs or something, because, you know,
Okay.
the way they look like. I mean, that is the specificity of Reddit. Obviously, I don't know, is that a niche? There might be, because there's probably some Instagram crossover there where you can monetize babushka blankets for your puppy. But the thing is, that is what Reddit is. Reddit is an assortment of everything. And usually everything has a community around it. You just need to find it. And with founders, it's easy. You find Twitter or indie hackers, or at least for a global community. And with writers, you also find them on Reddit. You find them in forums somewhere, like private forums or public forums where you can sign up. You have WhatsApp groups. You have Facebook, a big thing. Also pretty much like Reddit, but less weird in many ways. That's Facebook. You find all kinds of groups. I know somebody who runs an animal transportation business that is the consequence of his mother organizing horse transportation in a state of the United States, because she owned horses, and at some point you need to get your horse from A to B, and you know, like, you had to organize it. You have to find a hauling company, and you had to put the horse in there, and you had to pick it up over there and pay somebody and make sure the horse is okay. She organized it on Facebook, and he took over the groups. And then he was I think he was a car mechanic. He didn't know how to code, but he thought, hey, if I can just build something here, I could probably make this so much easier. He taught himself how to code, and he now built an animal hauling marketplace platform for people to transport all kinds of animals from all over the United States to another place. So he literally had the Facebook groups to source the information and source the initial customers from, and then built a product as a consequence of understanding their most critical problems. And that is just so much more reliable than standing in your shower and thinking, Tinder for cats sounds like a really good idea. You know, because obviously an idea is wonderful, but there is no validation. But if you see people struggling with the same thing in their communities already, that is validation right there. You don't even need to ask them because they are already complaining about it. And that's kind of where embedded entrepreneurship comes in. You find their communities, you put yourself in there, and you shut up. You start listening, you start observing, and you take note of what people talk about, right? You figure out how often do they complain about this particular problem, or do they just complain? Do they ask for help? Do they ask for recommendations or alternatives? You have different layers of what people need, and depending on what they ask for, you have a different thing that you need to build for them and a different level of education that you need to have for them to understand that your solution is good. But being part of a community, being part of a Twitter circle, Twitter groups, or just following the right people on Twitter, being part of Facebook groups, public groups, or invite-only groups, being even just subscribing to industry newsletters is sometimes being part of a community. And then, of course, going to meetups or being in the audience or contributing to events like this one that we're on right now. All of this is being part of your community. And in all of this, you will hear people complain, ask for help, recommendations or alternatives. And if you just take note of these things, eventually you won't be able to stop yourself from seeing a problem that you can solve, because you have a particular set of skills that, when applied to this problem, is your unique mode into building something meaningful for this community.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, Rene, go ahead.
Arvid, yeah, we kind of resonate with that because we have something similar. We have like this IT community here, which I've noticed something like connecting with the community. A lot of people react to that and do that and try to kind of get in touch with the community. What happens is that they go about and do some event for 5 times, 10 times, 15, and then they don't get the results that they hoped for. Then they do it for the 20th time, and it was kind of, I thought this is going to work faster. Well, I'm going to do it for 5 more times, and then I'm going to give up. And I've noticed that people tend to give up after 20-ish times. So that's kind of the magic number. And I've kind of realized, and Vishnya too, and I know that you did, you have to do it for 100 times. You have to do it for 100 times and then give up. And after 100 times, if you don't see any glimmer of hope, then perhaps you should give up. But after 100th time, you get this habit of doing it, and you get this itch that you need to scratch. Like if you don't do a live stream or an event, you feel bad. It becomes strange. So this is kind of perhaps a good way to approach it, not to give up that easily. And results come very differently than from other ways of kind of putting yourself out there. What is your experience regarding that?
Yeah, consistency beats everything else. Like consistency will create luck eventually, because you just need to, if there's a 1% chance of you being successful and a 99% chance of not being successful, well, if you try this 100 times, that there's an increasing chance that you will, that this time or the next time will be an opportunity for you. So it's like it's a cumulative effect, and it's an exponential effect as well. Like exponential things, they start like looks very flat, and then over time they shoot up, and that moment. It's the compound effect, right? And that's the thing. It looks like nothing is happening for the first 10, 20, 30 times. Like if you start on Twitter, if you want to build a Twitter audience, right? And you take my advice that I give people and you start engaging with people, because that's better than just tweeting something out, right? You try to actually like engage in an ongoing conversation. For the first 5 times, people might not respond to you. And then maybe one guy or one girl responds to you and gives you some kind of feedback, and you try again for 4 times, nobody talks to you. And then you do it again, and you do it for a couple more days, a couple more weeks, and then people will start seeing your face. Not because you've tweeted 40 times, but because you've tweeted for 20 days in a row. That is where the magic is. The magic is not in doing a thing all over and doing as much as you can. It's just doing it so that you show up for others all the time. If you become a face that people just expect to see and that people are not surprised by, then you're building mind share just for yourself in people's minds already. And that is incredibly valuable, even though it might not directly result in a sale or, in an opportunity. over time. This stuff is just gonna, you cannot not benefit from that eventually, because people have this kind of reciprocity effect, right? People need to reciprocate. If I give you something for free for 100 days straight, like, I want to see how long you can take without feeling like guilty enough to give back. And you don't have to like send me a lot of money or anything like that, but just helping me, retweeting what I tweet, or telling a friend about my work. That is enough, right? For a human mind, just giving back in any capacity is good enough. And you can leverage that capacity or that need to eventually reciprocate in people by just being there and giving as much as you can. Because the more you do that, the more people will share what you do, because they see, oh, I benefit from this. I like these people over there. Let me show it to them, because they probably can benefit from it as well. And then these people get stuff for free. And then these people share with their friends. People just continuously increase your reach because you're cool, you're helping. And then eventually stuff comes back to you. But you cannot expect things to immediately pay off. So you have to defer your need to get the compensation of sorts, and you cannot guarantee the point when it happens. You can't say, okay, 2 weeks from now I'm gonna get a paying customer or something. Might be tomorrow, might be later, right? You never know, but overall it's just gonna increase. And yes, that is my experience. That has been my experience. That's also why just an hour ago or so, I recorded episode 127 of my podcast. Because, you got to keep going. If I want to get to 200 eventually, well, I got to have 127, 128, 129, and so on. I just need to do it once a week. I do it, and I don't fail. I don't have a week that I skip, because I know this consistency is going to help me continuing the thing, and it's going to show to people that I'm serious about what I'm doing, because I'm investing not just money into what I'm doing, but my time. And what the other things that I'm not doing say a lot about what I'm doing as well, right? I could do many, many things, but I choose to do this. And that's what people see. And that's what sticks in their mind. And that's what creates this eventual reciprocity at some point.
It's like a proof of character. Like, it can be, you don't have to think of it as for clients. You can think about investors. Mm-hmm. Like, someone could be watching from a corner, saying, look at this person. Wow, so much consistency, and that person is just not giving up. Wow, this person definitely isn't flaky. Like, they're giving their best. So I think
it's happening. This stuff is happening right now. If you go on Twitter and you look at these little indie SaaS businesses that are being acquired through micro-acquire or through people who reach out in the Twitter DM and then offer them like a 6 or 7 figure deal, that happens because people put themselves out there. They share how they built their business. They share little MRR, little graphs, right? People love graphs that go up and to the right. So this helps. But even if they don't share their numbers, the fact that they share consistently, relentlessly, and even if they have nothing to say, they still try and make the effort, that speaks way more about you and your business than a balance sheet ever could. And that's why these people sell their businesses for higher premiums. That's why they get better connections. They make better partnerships, because who wouldn't want to be working with a person that is so reliably, authentically honest and hardworking, right? There's no shadiness, because it's impossible to be shady and transparent at the same time. You can't. And if you can, then you're so good an actor that's probably already great again. I don't know. But if you try to be authentic and transparent, you can't lie to people. You have to be truthful and honest and vulnerable at some point, because otherwise it's not transparent. It's an act, right? And people are super good at figuring out if people are acting or not in front of them, particularly on social media. We know that. Like, we can see and we hear, we smell it, right? So if you're just yourself, your true nature comes out eventually, and people see that, and that's what they resonate with. Absolutely.
And Arvid, I've noticed that people know you already. Like, strangers come up to you, and they already know you, perhaps potential clients. You don't have to give the backstory.
Yes.
They already know everything. They're just jumping on they're focusing on the thing getting started. Yeah. Like, I kind of noticed that a lot of times because of this.
Yeah, it happens to me all the time.
And this is my experience with you, Arvid. So I don't know where I discovered you. It was most definitely on Twitter. Probably somebody mentioned something about building in public, which is the topic that I want us to discuss next. But your podcasts and the way you record them, this is what we discussed on Twitter. I asked you, how do you produce your podcasts? You basically write out your blog posts, put them on your blog, and then you read them out loud in a podcast that's like 15 minutes long episode, which enables you to come into my head and be there with me. So I feel like I know you. And this is probably the reason why I was, I was free to approach you and invite you to our show, because if I didn't feel like I know you, of course I don't know you personally, but that
now you do.
I would, yeah, I do, exactly. But that feeling of intimacy with another person via Twitter or LinkedIn, that's amazing, and this gives me so much hope. Your Twitter followership is around 50K people, and you tweet like in your book you say that you spread out your tweets like 20 tweets a day. Is that, do you still do that, or how do you manage your Twitter feed today?
Yeah, it is. I have multiple. First, thank you for talking about this, because it's really nice to be heard in many ways. Like, first of for thank you. But in terms of how I approach my Twitter, I schedule a lot of stuff, mostly retweets and quote tweets. That's what I schedule, because I want people to always find something interesting on my feed, even if I'm not actively tweeting at that point, right? So whenever I find something, I often retweet like days in advance. I schedule something. Like today, I find a really cool thing, but I think, okay, it's not time pressing for me to retweet it now because it's a good thread or a piece of information that is not time sensitive. Next Sunday, perfect day for this. I put it there, and that's kind of how I fill up my week. And then throughout the day, I take a lot of time to engage with people in ongoing conversations where I need to be present and need to have like, be right there and spend some time on it. So it's quite easy to get to 20 tweets a day, because every reply is essentially a tweet. So that counts already, right? If you have a conversation with somebody on Twitter, you can put on 10 tweets within like 10 minutes if you're really going at it. Obviously, that's most of the time very emotional, or there are many of these opportunities to get slightly too emotional. But, even if you have a normal discussion, it quickly adds up. And that count kind of reflects that. But I try to schedule a lot of content so I can reach a global audience. I have a lot of people, obviously, in North America and Canada and, Europe, language-wise, right? It's really, I chose English as my communication language because it's just more globally available. Otherwise, I could probably talk German at you, but you probably wouldn't understand me at this point. So that wouldn't help. So I would.
I'm a professor of German language.
Sehr gut. But I'm not going to try and confuse the people that want to listen to me for the knowledge, not the confusion, right? So I also have a large audience in India, in Southeast Asia, even China, Japan, Australia, all over the place. So to be able to reach people with something interesting, I do two things. First off, I schedule stuff around the clock, so there's always something going on. And second, I auto retweet everything I say on Twitter 6 or 12 hours later from my regular account as a person. So that is kind of what I do, so that everybody gets access to what I'm saying. And I see there's a question, personal profile or company page on Twitter. I can segue into that immediately. All I do on Twitter is personal. I do have a couple Twitter accounts for my projects, but I rarely use them, because I have found that whatever I do as a person, being either part of a business or running the business, owning the business, or whatever it is, I have so much more credibility with people as a person first and then part of a project than the other way around. Now, if you are running a software as a service business or anything, and you have a company profile page on Twitter, perfectly fine. You can use that to have like feature announcements and to interact with particular customers or do customer service through that. You can leverage that. But as a founder, I would always have a personal brand that is attached to, but not completely overlapping with the business. Because here's the thing. Imagine the worst comes to happen and your business fails. It's unfortunate. It happens quite a lot. And, you know, it's just the reality of entrepreneurship. There's always a risk. If you have a strong founder profile, that failure of your business is actually going to help you because you have more to share. You have another part of your story you can put out there. You can help people with. You can teach them. You can entertain them. You can find sympathy. You can find motivation if you do this through a personal brand. If they see you as a person that tried and failed, they see you as somebody who just shared something very vulnerable. If they see just a business that went out of business, they don't care and they move on. The personal brand transcends any business success and failure for the better. Like a personal brand would benefit from a business success just as much from a business failure, which is why I would definitely always focus on the personal brand. And that's what I do. I have a little SaaS business called Permanent Link. I have a link to that maybe in my bio, but that's it. I don't put that front and center. My writing, my other work, by just being part of the community, that's why people follow me. They don't follow me because I run a SaaS. Maybe they do, but they follow me because I have something meaningful to say about SaaS businesses, and I say it. That's what they follow me for, and that's the brand that I am, and I want to be.
Amazing. So this is similar to what we do on LinkedIn. I'm not big on Twitter. I just lurk and read stuff and follow makers and software developers because I'm naturally interested in that space. LinkedIn, and I have to say hi to my LinkedIn gang, which is Darko. Hi, Darko. Of course, and thank you, Sanya, for coming to our live show. So LinkedIn is great. I hear so much talk about LinkedIn being, oh my God, it's so boring. It's something different.
Praise.
Yeah. It's completely different from Twitter. You cannot post 20 times a day, even if you wanted, because all subsequent posts would kill your first distribution of your main post. That's probably something similar to Twitter. But I see a community being, I can build a community on LinkedIn too. People transcend their companies there. So company profiles are nothing on LinkedIn. Yeah. And building a brand as a person, it doesn't matter where you work, which company you're connected to. It will go where you go. And I'm so glad that Twitter is actually a good space where you can build something. I never thought about Twitter as a place to build community. But when I see you and when I see people like, I don't know, Noah Bragg from Potion, Sanya had an interview with Noah a couple of months ago. When I see you making stuff that doesn't have to, be a overnight success, it gives me hope for the future. And why I'm saying this, I'm going on a long tangent. Twitter is not popular in Croatia. There's a lot of good developers in Croatia, and I want them to, to feel the power of Twitter, to go there and to expose themselves and what they work on. And this is, the build in public, which I see that you have on your T-shirt, which is amazing. Yay! So let's segue, please, into the topic that is so dear to you and also to me. Build in public. What is it, and why would you build in public at all?
Noah Bragg, great example. Like I use Noah in my Twitter course that I recently published as an example for an amazing builder in public. So I'm just gonna do that here too. Noah announced that he's gonna build something new on Twitter. Like he already at that point had 1,000 followers because he's been active in the community on Twitter and the indie hacker software entrepreneur community. He is a co-host of a podcast that is pretty popular in the space. And he had already built a software tool that he had built somewhat in public. He sometimes shared something about it, but it wasn't as intentional. But with Potion, it was super intentional from the start. So one day he said, I'm going to build something really cool and I'm going to talk about it tomorrow. Immediately, he immediately leveraged the capacity of people on Twitter to be excited by something new. It's just what it is, right? Every social media has this, where people are just always looking for the new thing. So Noah's first tweet was, he didn't even say what it's going to be. He just said, I'm going to build a business and I'm going to build it in public. And from that day, like he had 1,000 followers. The next day he had 2,000 followers. It's just the excitement that people had for a new build in public project that got him this avalanche of new people that were interested in what he was doing. So the next day he posted about, I'm going to build a tool that turns a Notion document into a website. And I think it was already called Potion at that point, but he said, that's what I'm going to be building. And then the next day, he shared a video where he talked about, okay, this is my financial situation right here. I have this income here, and I'm this much savings, and I need to build a business within these couple months so I can sustain my cost of living. The transparency in this is so incredibly refreshing in a world where everybody is like trying to build projects in secrecy so nobody steals my idea. He was doing, I'm building this project with this technology, and I need this much money, and I'm trying to go into this market. It was just, he kind of involved people in his journey from day one, from the conception, not just to building it, not just the engineering part. He did that too sometimes, but everything about the business was essentially an open book to a degree. Like, he didn't share everything, but he shared enough that it looked like it was everything, you know, like he shared all the things that he wanted to share and could share with his community of software entrepreneurs that he had already assembled around him before he had even started this particular project. But I see people doing this even with no audience. They start building, and then they immediately hook into the existing Building Public community, and they find their first followers there, and it starts in a similar way. Maybe not with 1,000 followers in a day, but a lot of attention anyway. So he started sharing all his little things that he was thinking about, like what he would be building, how he would be building it. He built a landing page. He linked that in a tweet. And another wonderful thing happened in that moment. Somebody commented on the landing page, hey, there's a typo. You should fix it like this. And then somebody essentially solved his problem for him in a Twitter comment. So he had just had to update his website, and it immediately made much more sense. And he didn't have to pay anybody for it. It's just the community empowering him to do things better. And that has been the story of Potion so far. I'm a customer. I use it, funny enough, for embeddedentrepreneur.com. That parts of that site is built on Potion. And it's really, really cool to see Noah just sharing reliably, consistently every single day. And not all of this is just technical. But he's not just sharing, oh, here's another software bug that I had, or here's another business process that I'm working on. Sometimes he shared a photo of himself with his kid where he said, hey, a new colleague appeared in the business today, right? It's just, he becomes a relatable human being that is also building a business. And for maybe as an example for Sanya here, he has Potion as a Twitter account for his business. He has Noah Bragg, Noah W. Bragg is his Twitter handle, as his Twitter personal brand. And whenever he tweets something about Potion or that is related to building Potion or generally building something, his Potion account retweets that particular thing with a comment. Like, his Potion account has a personality, you know, a little playful thing, and then he brings that content into the people who follow Potion for the software, for the business, but he also interacts with it as a founder. It's an interesting little dance, a little play that he does there. And Noah has become very successful with this. Even while building Potion, he shared the story and the actual ongoing story of selling his previous business. It was super exciting. Like he said, I want to sell my business. And then he tweeted about this. And then in the tweets, in the responses to the tweet, somebody got interested in it. Then they moved it into a Slack. And then Noah posted, with the permission of the person that actually bought the business, the conversation from Slack into the thread where it started. As a viewer, as a reader, as a listener, whatever it is, you feel so involved in this. Because you know the guy. You know the story. You know where it came from. You were there when he started posting about building this business. You liked it. You said, "Go, Noah, go!" You know, you encouraged him. You motivated him, and then all of a sudden, here is his success. It's not just his success; it's yours too. That's the thing about building in public. The moment you involve people in your journey, it becomes their journey as well. It's like if you're writing a novel and your alpha readers become a character in the story. That's what happened to people like Vova, who helped him, like I said earlier, with the text thing on his homepage. Now he's part of the product, like it or not. He helped the product become the product that it turned out to be. And that's what building in public is about. It's about sharing your ongoing journey of building a business, sharing whatever you deem interesting or shareable. It depends, right? Some businesses share more about the software. Some businesses share more about the community in which they are. Some businesses share about how everything is connected. Some don't. For some, there's a little bit of secrecy. For some, there's more. Some stop sharing at a certain point. Some keep sharing. Like Buffer shared a lot about their internals until they had, I don't know, 6 figures in monthly recurring revenue, and then they stopped. Transistor FM, a podcast hosting business, they stopped sharing their detailed financial metrics at $25,000 monthly recurring revenue. Building a public is not forever. At some point, you have to stop. Otherwise, you're just inviting too much competition, or you're giving away too much, right? But we can talk about this too. But the idea is that you have a journey and you get people invested emotionally, with their attention, sometimes maybe with their money as a potential customer, or at least with their goodwill as somebody who talks about it to their friends. And then you keep them engaged along the journey. You have feedback loops. They help you, you help them. Like it's an open public act of finding the right people to help you in any kind of capacity, helping them, teaching them throughout this. Here's how I'm building my business. If you want to build your own, just follow me. You'll see stuff that you never thought is interesting. And I'm going to run into those walls. I'm going to, like you run into it, you share how you break through the wall. And then this person that listens doesn't have to run into the wall. They can go around it, or break through better. It's just that's a win-win as well. You win because you get your attention of people and their help, and they win because you teach them something that would be very painful for them to teach themselves.
Yeah, it's sorry, Vishnu.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So regarding building in public, so we as a company, so 46Alex, for example, we are in a very competitive market like telecom. It's very competitive, sometimes even nasty. And we kind of went around that. We wanted to build in public also. We wanted to engage our audience and have them participate in some things. So we thought about what we can do. And the solution came in building an add-on, a plugin for WordPress.
Yeah.
So, okay, we will not going to share our secret inner workings of our system core, but we are going to go ahead and build an add-on for WordPress with you involved. And we started to involve the WordPress community here locally. We're going to do it a bit more, but we are just kind of sharing, okay, we did this. We know it kind of sucks, but take a look at it. What would you like to have better, perhaps?
Yeah,
and
cool.
Yeah, and people ignored it, but someone reached out and said, look, there's this way of, it will be very cool for me to have a contact form. So I want to have a contact form where me as an administrator of the page get an SMS when someone reaches out to me on that form. So the end user doesn't know that I'm being contacted by an SMS, but that's important for me because of XY or whatever, because there's this big campaign sale or whatever. And we didn't know that. We didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
And so getting to that kind of building in public is beautiful, because you can actually, we are getting to the beginning of your talk. Like, you are talking to the people that care the most about the thing working as it should. So yeah, building in public is very nice. And if you are scared about revealing the inner workings of your company, you can do stuff that are kind of far away from the core. Yeah, like add-ons for something.
That's a really cool idea. That I love that, because it's a great example of, you understood the value of building in public. You also understood the risk of putting too much information out there, and then you kind of put them all together into something that is now beneficial to everybody. It's awesome. Yeah. Great idea. I love that. And it's an open source thing, very likely, right? It's an open source plugin. So now people also benefit from learning how to build plugins. Doesn't have to do anything necessarily with SMS APIs or anything. Now you're teaching on so many levels. Really cool.
It's about being very open and very talkative, and kind of, again, I'm noticing some keywords like being authentic, being transparent, being very open to communication, I've kind of noticed that through all of this talking that we did
it's like
today.
being a human being, like the thing that all of us actually want to connect with, right? We don't want to connect with a brand. We don't want to connect with a computer. I mean, sorry, but we don't want to connect with an API, as a person. Obviously, our software wants to connect with an API, but we want to connect with people. And the more you can be a person that is not fake, a person that is just being who they are, doing what they do because they want to help other people, which is, everybody wants that, right? I don't know any person that not deep down is not focused on making life a better place for everybody around them. Even the most selfish person has a child or a dog, like somebody, something that they want to make the world better for, or their parents, or somebody they like. It doesn't matter. Like, everybody wants to make this a better place. So the more person you can be, the more this will resonate with people, and then they will help you, and everybody will be helped.
I have a question, like a very practical question, like putting connecting a face with a company. Mm-hmm. So that person, if that person is a co-owner or a co-founder, mm-hmm. whatever you want to call them, has a stake in the company. So that makes sense. But should we fear, as employers, should we fear putting someone that is an employee as a face of a company? How do we get past that fear? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can hire a person who's a really cool person and you have a good relationship, but life happens and that person transitions on. Should we be worried about that? How do we work around that? Do you have some experience regarding that? What is your advice?
You know what? But the best advice I can give you is don't make it just one person then. Sorry. But the idea is, like, if your company is full of people who proudly are all faces of the company. Your engineers are talking about engineering. Your marketing people are sharing their marketing knowledge. Your salespeople give the newest and coolest sales tips. Yeah. Or, if you make it part of the culture for people to be a proud representation of the company, like a personal brand that is part of a company, then you don't need to fear that the one person that you elected to be the face of the company, like you see with Elon Musk or something, right? Where obviously he is one of a kind, and the relationship with Tesla is also different in many ways. But if you only have one spokesperson, then everything is focused on them, and all the good and all the bad that they bring to it kind of, it's either or. But if you have everybody in the company proudly representing it, then it averages out and people leave, new people come in. If you have a cultural approach to this, if you say, hey, if you're on Twitter, talk about our business, our products on Twitter. Here are the things that you shouldn't talk about because they're internal. Have a document for this. Have a social media content allow list or a deny list or whatever it is. Like, you have to build this for your own business, like how much and how many things you want to talk about. Maybe you want to have somebody who signs off on certain topics or whatever. You can build this in a methodical, process-based way that everybody is allowed to talk about your business and become a representative. And then your business itself is the sum, more than the sum of all these people. That's how I would approach it. If you look at GitHub, or if you're larger software businesses, they figured this out. They have everybody be their evangelist, everybody in the company, right? It's not just a couple people. It's everybody who works there. Everybody who works for Twitter is Twitter, and that's very notable. And small businesses benefit from that a lot because, okay, I've seen this person speaking about this company and I've seen this person speaking about this company. It may just be two dudes or, two people, but two people, all right, there must be something behind this, right? It's just your presence is important, and the more people you can kind of take their personal credibility and project that onto your business, the more your business will benefit from that as well.
Arvid, can you share? Sorry, can you share? How did you approach a small company? Let's say 10 people. And one of them, like most of the IT companies, I don't want to stereotype, but most of the companies in IT world have a bigger percentage of introverts than extroverts. That's kind of a fact, I think. We have exceptions, but okay. How do you pull people out of their shells? Like, you have 10 people. You're not GitHub. Like, you don't have I don't know how many employees they have. You don't have a bunch of people out there. You have a few. How do you this is very practical, like for startups. They are not like you are looking for a good, I don't know, Python developer. You didn't put in the terms like requirements, be very open to talking on podcasts, right? So
yeah, that's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, most of the people will be like, no.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah,
how do you switch it up? How do you like create that? Do you have some? I know it's not that simple to answer, but could you kind of give us your
I don't know
thoughts?
if it's actually too hard to do that, but like I did the Myers-Briggs test once a couple years ago, and I scored INTP, and the I stands for introvert because you're now talking to an introvert, apparently. But the thing is, I'm introverted in many ways. But when I talk about the things that I care about, I am an E. I'm extroverted, incredibly extroverted, because I've thought about this all my life. I've talked about it so many times. I know exactly what I want to say. I know that the people I'm talking to care about what I have to say. Like when it comes to software, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to writing, super extroverted. Talk to me about something else, right? And I'm out. That's how I work. And I think most introverts are like this. Like I'm a big fan of online games. I'm a big fan of miniature painting. I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm a nerd as they come, like Dungeons and Dragons, just put it on me. I love that stuff. When I talk to a fellow Star Trek introvert about Star Trek, this conversation is like between two world-renowned experts that are on a stage in front of millions of people sharing their perspective. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter how introverted you are. If you talk to the people you care about the things you care about, in their communities where you're safe, where the people respect you for your introvertedness, or where the people don't mind that you only talk about this, then you can talk to a lot of people about a lot of things. And if you go to a meetup, I remember this. I'm going to the JavaScript meetup in Hamburg, in Germany. Like it was like 95% nerds that wouldn't talk to anybody on the street. And I know stereotypes, right? But that is how many people see themselves, and they kind of put themselves in the box, and it self-perpetuates into the actual stereotype at some point. But when it came to which JavaScript framework is the best, there was an open war, but like everybody was shouting. It was wonderful. And it just shows you, like in the right group of people, you can be yourself. You can let go. You can share your honest and truthful and way too loud opinion about something that you care about. So enable your people, software engineers, whatever introverted level they may have, to talk to other software engineers. You don't have to have them talk about your business in front of marketing people. Just let them go amongst the nerds and talk about if they're backend engineer, like let them go to the other Rails folks and talk about their Rails project and the problem with throttling connections and, like these specifics that they care about. Have them represent that aspect of your company to these people. If you have a marketing person, well, don't have them talk to the nerds or to the people who are like engineers or something. Have them speak to other marketing people who they resonate with. Just allow people to stay in their silo, as questionable as siloing is, but in terms of learning how to be a public speaker or learning how to talk about things in a forum that is maybe not just you and me, but involves other people, being on sure footing, talking about the things that you care about to people who also care about him, is the best way to get started. And over time, like I didn't start out like this, right? I started out as somebody who is right or something, but now I'm very confident in what I say because I've said it so many times. And it's the same for everybody of any level. And if they're not comfortable, then let them be uncomfortable and let them not do it at all. It's also fine to allow people to not do the thing you want them to do because they're not comfortable with it, right? It's an agency thing. And maybe they're better in writing. Maybe these people are better at writing blog posts for your blog. Maybe they don't need to go on social media. Maybe they're so much better at like copy editing your website copy to make it more converting, whatever, right? Everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses, and allow people to play towards them. And if somebody figures out, hey, I love tweeting about software engineering stuff, here's your software engineering Twitter person right there. So it's just an exploration thing.
Cool.
Renee, I know what you can do. You can install secret microphones and cameras around your company. So
that Twitch.
Yeah, exactly. So when people let, their freak fly, as they say, you just record it and show people how actually passionate they are about stuff. And who knows, maybe it's another show.
Yeah,
that is
kidding.
an interesting approach. Privacy a bit questionable, but I love the idea.
Questionable.
Like, showing people like that they are more energized when they talk about something they care about. That is something that most people don't know, because we only know the state we're in right now, right? We don't have this kind of a relative positioning where we can see ourselves from the outside. That usually doesn't happen. So, I mean, if you do this as a controlled experiment that they know is happening, that actually might be an interesting idea. Like on a company retreat, like have a stage discussion or something and film it and then show them. That could be cool. I like the idea. That's good, because that could be the switch that you flick in somebody's brain. So you can say, you're not an introvert when you talk about this. Here is the proof, right?
Exactly. I'm an introvert myself. Exactly how you described, Arvid, yourself, that's me. But when you force me to do stuff that I don't want, no, I'm out. So that's an amazing concept when we return back to the building in public, you let your personality shine, and you let your, I wouldn't say flaws, but you share your negative emotions. You share your negative, whatever happens in your business or in your, whatever you're building. So it's hard to share stuff while it's happening. It's easy for me to go on a podcast and tell people about some stuff I failed at 10 years ago. But how do you deal with this when you're actually dealing with something that's really deep, and you don't have to share it, but how do you approach sharing negative stuff?
Yeah, it's a framing issue most of the time, right? It's about, how do I perceive this, both in the moment where it happens to you, where you're like emotionally biased, and the moment before it happened and after it happened. It's a complicated issue, but framing anything that happens to you as an opportunity to learn and teach is something that has made it very easy for me. Because if it's a clear opportunity to learn, benefits me, perfect, talk about it. Because it's something that in talking about it or in writing about it most of the time, I get even more insight. Like you were talking about this earlier, and how I do my podcast. Like I write the thing out, I put it on my blog, or I write it out and then I record it into this microphone. And then in writing, I had all my ideas there. And in reading, in talking into the microphone, I get to feel, does it make sense? Is that what I'm currently saying? Does it make sense? Does it flow? Like, is it good? So most of the time, me actually narrating what I wrote into my microphone is a second editing pass, where I kind of see, okay, now this is way too slow. Now this doesn't make sense. I'm just like, I wrote it and it made sense, but now that I read it, doesn't make. So I have to edit it at that point. Sometimes I do it on the fly and then I edit it later in the document. Sometimes I stop recording and go edit again. It's like, in writing, I reflect more on what I'm actually doing, on what I'm trying to say. And that's sharing, building in public is the same thing. If you run into a problem and you try to communicate it to your audience of fellow founders, of fellow engineers, of your potential customers, your prospects, your existing customers, if you try to explain it to people, it's like what is it called? Rubber duck programming, right? Where you have the little ducky sitting there and you're trying to explain the problem to them. And in explaining it to the inanimate object, you understand the actual problem and then you solve it. Same deal as with writing and building in public. In trying to teach people something about what you're going through, or just sharing it for the hope that somebody will teach you, you get more insight into the problem. And that's a framing issue, because the hard part is to start writing. The writing isn't hard. It's not hard to figure out how to describe it. You'll figure this out eventually, but to overcome your inhibition to talk about it, that's the hard part. Right? So your imposter syndrome is blocking you. I shouldn't write about this. I'm not qualified to even talk about this. Or I shouldn't even attempt it. Or I don't have enough followers who, like, you come up with all these reasons why you wouldn't want to be vulnerable in public. But actually doing it and then learning, oh yeah, that actually wasn't too hard and I learned something from this. If you get used to this and you get used to reframing it as a teaching and a learning opportunity at the same time, then almost any situation you run into is worth sharing. Obviously, there are some situations that are not good for sharing. Like you have a really bad conversation with a customer, they insult you, or they start suing you, or for some reason, right? You have like legal problems, or you have like demoralizing things that you don't want to amplify even more. You can kind of keep them on the down low, or just mention them, or like there are ways of dealing with this. But most things, little issues you run into, interesting things you learned, little challenges that you overcame or you didn't, great opportunities to learn more about it, teach people in the process, and get more attention on you and your product. So reframe it as an opportunity for learning or teaching.
Amazing. I'm going to, make a mental note about podcasting and blogging. So podcasting is a way to make my writing better and have another channel, one more channel to distribute my stuff. So I already made a decision a couple of months before that I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to do it the Arvid style. So I just got one more push to actually do it, because you now convinced me additional. Nice. That's amazing.
Glad to.
Arvid, we were talking about building in public, and we could go like for another hour. But to wrap things up, you're not only building in public, you're writing in public. And you wrote your book, Embedded Entrepreneur, in public. And now you're going to, this is so meta, write a book about building in public by building in public. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of everything flows into each other here. And funny enough, it's just so enjoyable to experiment with these things, that the things I want to talk about are part of the experiment, like this, right? Like writing a book about building in public, essentially, it's a bit meta and it's a bit self-referential, but it does work for me because in doing it, I learn a lot that either verifies the things that I'm teaching in the book, or it invalidates them, so I have to rethink them. But yeah, like this is still an ongoing project for me, like the Build in Public book. Some part of it became part of the Twitter course that I recently put out, because I kind of wanted to change my medium as well. So I thought, okay, writing is a lot of fun and podcasting is a lot of fun. And most of the things that I wrote about and podcasted about landed in my books or my content eventually. I kind of use this. I tweet about a thing. If I get resonance, I tweet more about the thing. If it gets more resonance, I write an article about the thing. And if I find enough things to write about, then I turn it into a book. It's just kind of bottom-up approach where ideas kind of bubble sort themselves. With the highest n squared complexity, doesn't matter, right? It is one of these things. So it just takes a lot of attempts to find good things, but the ones that bubble to the top, they're really good because they're validated every step along the way. So that's kind of how I approach my whole Twitter writing as well. But yes, the Twitter course has a very huge built in public component, because I noticed I love writing about this, but talking about this with examples right next to me is almost way more efficient than just writing about it would be. So I'm still trying to write the book, but the Twitter course has been getting so much more resonance on building in public in particular, that this is the current thing that I'm very focused on. But yes, everything I'm doing is building in public. If it works, I build something cool in public, and if it fails, I built something cool in public that failed. It's still a process that teaches people what I do, how I do it, how it works, how it doesn't work. And every step along the way, I get immediate feedback that I worked into it. The Twitter course, I wrote that for 20 some days, from January 1st to I think January 21st. I wrote it essentially in Keynote, where I had my slides, and I wrote it into the presenter's notes, and it turned out to be like 45,000 words or something. That is a mid-sized 250-page book. But I turned it into a course. So I got a teleprompter. I put my iPhone as my camera onto the teleprompter, and iPhone 13 has an amazing quality camera. This is an HD camera with really good field of vision. It's incredible. If you watch my course, you would think it's a fancy camera, and it is, because an iPhone is not too cheap, I guess, but it's an iPhone on a teleprompter with another iPhone rolling my 45,000 line script under it, and me just narrating it into the camera. But that worked super well for me. And that course is everything I know about Twitter plus the build in public part of it as well. And so far, people have really, really resonated with it, because I teach people to engage. The things that work for me, I teach. So I say, stop tweeting things that you think are cool and talk to people on Twitter. And that makes all the difference in engagement, in followers, and in impressions and whatnot, in actual opportunities. It's kind of the core of the course. Of course, there's more, but that is kind of the biggest thing. And that's what embedded entrepreneurship is too. Like all of these things kind of flow into each other. Embedded entrepreneurship is going into a community, being part of the conversations, and learning something. And audience building is that now just talk about what you're doing, and you're building an audience while you learn. It's an amazing thing that flows into each other. You can use Twitter, and I would assume LinkedIn. I just recently started using LinkedIn a bit more professionally by actually sharing something that I know on the platform. But it doesn't matter if it's Twitter or if it's LinkedIn or Facebook. If you go into these communities and you start sharing a journey with people that care about what you're doing, you will build an audience and an interesting business that is sustainable and will create like reliable customers coming into it from the community just by talking about what you're doing. So don't hide in your basement. Well, I am hiding in my basement right now, but don't hide in your basement and don't share it. Share it. That's the part. That's the important part.
That's amazing, Arvid. It's been so great to actually follow your journey on Twitter. Whatever you're actually doing there, like you said, it's doable on LinkedIn, anywhere where people are. And is probably Twitter is the best place to find you. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, that's why I'm 24 hours a day, way too much. But my DMs are open. Everybody who has a question will get an answer eventually. Takes a while with 50,000 followers, but I'm trying to be there for everybody who needs my help, because I know that I got a lot of help when I needed it, and now I'm here to give it back.
Amazing. Is there anything you want to say that we haven't covered, but it's important to wrap things up with?
Yeah, just be kind. Like if everything that you do in your business, in your personal life, in your professional life starts with kindness and trying to help and empower other people, it can only go well for you, because the right people will find you and they will make your life better. So if you just don't look for hacks, don't look for trying to cheat people or like get something that you shouldn't get, like just be nice, be kind. And that will shine. Like that will shine brighter than any quick amount of money that you can make. Because that will build relationships, and relationships are where opportunities come from. So that would be my advice to people. That's
amazing. I don't want to add anything, because that's, I think, the best message for the end of this show. Sanya is saying hi, and we say
Thanks.
Hi to Sanya back. So Arvid, thank you very much for this show, for coming to our live stream. Everybody, thank you. We're doing these live shows less in English, but mostly in Croatian. But if you want to follow us, go to our website, zajednica Rijeka.com. Rene, we're going to build an English page probably some of these months.
Yeah, we also on YouTube. You can look up, like you can write in IT Community Rijeka, so
exactly,
or IT Community Croatia. It will come up. So yeah,
amazing. Cool. Yeah, so that's been our show, Arvid. You have a great week and great day, and thank you for coming.
Thank you both so much. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.